Corbin, let's dive right into it. Let's start on the diamond, and we'll start with things over at Marita Hines right now. Kind of some good, and as we kind of found out here just a little earlier today, some bad news regarding softball.
Yeah, you lose to Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship in extra innings, and listen, it took them 4 times to beat you, and it took extra innings to do it. I didn't mind the loss. It kind of brings more, power to the Big 12 maybe on a national perspective, which I think will help, at least while we're still here. But at the same time, you kind of hope, okay, this whole Jordy Bahl dark cloud kind of hanging over the team right now. Nobody really knows what's going on. Well, thanks to the Oklahoma breakdown with Teddy and Gabe, Patty Gasso announces a hairline fracture in the throwing arm of Jordy Bahl, which is significant news to say the least. So before we get into kind of the breakdown of what's going to take place in Norman starting on Friday, Tyler, this is huge news. Do we feel less confident about what this team is capable of coming off of an Oklahoma State loss and now the Jordy Bahl situation?
I don't want to factor in the Oklahoma State loss in the Big 12 tournament championship too much. I mean, like you said, you've played this team 4 times. It's hard to beat a team 3 times, much less 4. So, but yeah, I'm going to say yes because I don't completely trust our pitching staff. And, ultimately now that it sounds like Jordy is going to be out for an extended amount of time, hopefully if the rest of the team can take care of business, maybe she can rejoin us for the Supers or hopefully even in the Women's College World Series. But the pitching staff right now, just lack of consistency to be dominant. Hope Trotwine has been very, very good as a starter, but when she's been asked to, kind of come in relief, she's really struggled, especially with her command. Nicole May's been kind of up and down all season long, and her last 2 outings, which both of them are against, were against a really, really good softball team up in Stillwater. Against OSU, the best team that we've played this year. They've gotten after her pretty good, especially in the early innings. So if Hope and Nicole throw strikes and trust their defense behind them, the number 1 defense in college softball, I might add, I think they win that game on Saturday. But you can't walk batters against quality opponents like that and not expect it to kind of come back and bite you. So with Jordy, it's sounding like she's going to be out for an extended amount of time. Obviously, our best wishes and thoughts and prayers go out to her. This is kind of a gut punch. I think that with the way this team has been playing all season long, the way things were trending, I think that this team was possibly starting to be, you could start to have the conversation, especially if this team goes on to win the national championship. This was possibly maybe a top 2 or 3 team of all time in collegiate softball. Now you lose your ace in the worst possible moment of the season as postseason play kicks off with regionals this weekend. It's a gut punch. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and you hate to say that there's kind of a window for this program because the team's going to continue to replenish talent. But when you look at what this team is losing after this year, how quickly can they make that up? So this all of a sudden becomes, if they don't win the national championship, it becomes a what if year. I mean, could this
absolutely.
team have been one of the greatest of all time? And, now could they be bounced even potentially before the World Series if, the bats don't come alive? But I thought something's been very interesting with this team as a whole, kind of shifting away from Jordy, is you saw it against Oklahoma State in Game 3, you saw it against Iowa State, and you saw it against Oklahoma State again. Their opponents have figured out maybe it's just a coincidence, but they figured out that if they continue to switch pitchers relatively frequently throughout the game, the bats don't come alive quite as much for the Sooners team. Yeah. And so that is the combination of losing your ace pitcher and then a team maybe figuring out a weakness for the bats, which are the heart of this team. You kind of have to hold on for a little bit here and hope that the bats can come alive regardless of who's pitching. Because let's be honest, I can get it. Oklahoma State's going to have good pitching lineup, but a switch in Iowa State's pitching lineup shouldn't hold you to 5 runs. And so that there's some things here that I think all have been uncovered about this softball team as of late. That isn't the right time to uncover them heading right into postseason play. Mm-hmm. Now that said, how much pushback are they going to get in these regionals? I'm not quite sure. We'll dive into that. But Tyler, is that something you've seen too, as far as just like, hey, switch up the pitching as much as you possibly can against this team, and that gives you the best chance?
I hadn't really thought about that, but I think you make a really good point. I was at the Thursday night Game 1 for the Bedlam series here in Norman, and, Kelly Maxwell, one of the best pitchers in college softball for the Pokes, I think she didn't give up a single run, maybe 1 hit throughout the first time going through the lineup. But once that lineup turned over and OU was able to see her for a second, third time, they really got after her. So yeah, that's a really good point. And you would think, starting postseason this weekend, however long this stretch goes, you would think that other teams that are studying Oklahoma, they're going to take a page out of Oklahoma State's playbook and maybe try that strategy, because once Oklahoma gets the bats rolling, I know that Jordy Bahl is probably not going to be in the circle, but Hope Trotwine, Nicole May, they're still good enough to where if you can only allow 3 to 4 runs, if that lineup gets going, I mean, we're talking 10, 12, 15 runs. So that makes things a whole lot easier on your pitching staff. Now, I will say this. I kind of like what Patty said in the post game after the Big 12 tournament championship, the lost OSU. I liked what Patty talked about, how, we're playing the long game. We're not here to win a conference tournament. We already
Right.
won the Big 12 regular season title. We're already the number one overall seed. Um, Jordy Bahl has thrown the most out of all three, or I guess you could even say five. We'll talk about the two other names that are probably going to have to be, at least mentioned because we might see him as postseason goes on. Jordy's thrown the most out of all three pitchers on this staff. She needed the rest, giving Hope, who comes over from North Texas, the opportunity. She's never been in an atmosphere like that, playing at the softball stadium up in Oklahoma City, 4,000 or 5,000 fans. I like that she was able to get that experience because every atmosphere from now on is going to be big time, national television, sold out stadiums. And Nicole May, while she struggled a little bit at times, her getting those innings I think was valuable, and we're going to need both of them to be, on their A game starting this weekend because, like we said, Corbin, I'm not sure how soon we're going to get Jordy back or if we're going to get her back at all. She did mention in that brief little snippet that Gabe and Teddy put out on Twitter that I think it was Jenny Finch that she mentioned, was able to play through something very, very similar to that. And, she's obviously probably the most decorated and, greatest collegiate softball pitcher of all time. She was able to go 32-0 and, lead her team to a national championship. So I'm not sure if that's possible with Jordy. No two injuries are the same. And, she's a freshman right now. Do you want her to push it knowing that you're going to have her for 3 more years after this? So it's kind of a tough thing that a tough situation that Patty finds herself in right now.
The question has to be asked, did they throw Jordy too much? It has to be. Because I understand that this coaching staff in particular probably understood from the get-go, Jordy has the
Yeah,
most talent of this entire pitching staff, but doesn't have the experience to back the talent. And experience at some point will matter, regardless if that's
right.
regular season play, conference championship, and then obviously making your way into the heavy postseason stuff. But she was pitched a lot, and she looked
Yeah.
great 95% of the time. But looking back, was she pitched too much? Her body had too much wear and tear, and that maybe has some association with this injury.
It's interesting, especially with her being a freshman. Once a newcomer comes on campus, a coach, you think what you have in them. You've recruited them, you've watched them in high school, you've seen, how they play the game, but how are they going to react? Once you're on that primetime level, the lights are on, packed house. Everybody's good at this level, Division One softball, especially once you get to this part of the season. So I can understand the thought process behind wanting to get her a large amount of innings, a large amount of experience, get her acclimated to playing at this level. But Corbin, after seeing what she did against Kentucky, Oklahoma State, and Texas, I mean, those are probably three of the top, maybe 15 teams in college softball, and she handled all three of those performances immaculately. I saw everything that I needed to out of her
Yeah.
in terms of her being able to handle the pressure, handle the bright lights. So we don't necessarily know how this injury kind of came about. I think Patty said that it was when she was fielding a
Warm-ups.
ground ball
Mm-hmm.
in warmups. So I don't know. I've got a buddy that he blew out his arm, had to have Tommy John surgery because he fielded a bunt
Yep.
coming off of the mound and threw it sidearm. So we don't know how the injury was sustained. But we can hope that. You can take care of business this weekend in the regionals. Sounds like they could have a tough matchup in the supers, and we'll see if medicine, time, and healing can be on our side with her.
Yeah, let's hop right into that. Regionals this weekend in Norman. OU takes on Prairie View A&M to kick things off Friday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And then I think actually some decently tough matchups. You've got Texas
Mhm.
A&M and Minnesota both in this region. Texas A&M, I have not watched them announce at all this year, but looking over their schedule feels very much like a Jekyll and Hyde type of team. They are 29-26 on the year. I want to note that, saying they started off 11-0, so haven't necessarily been playing well down the stretch. You look at
Yeah.
some strange losses, losing to Houston twice, losing to Weber State, but then some pretty good wins. You got a win over number 13 Florida, a win over number 20 Georgia, a win over number 22 LSU, and a win over number 4 Arkansas. Granted, they went on to lose all of those series, but then they go out and they take 2 of 3 from number 5 Alabama. So on
Yeah.
a single given day, it seems like this Texas A&M team can probably beat anybody. Do I have extreme confidence that they can beat the Sooners twice? Not very much. But you look over and kind of the other side, these two teams face off, A&M versus Minnesota. Minnesota 26-24-1 on the year. 2 close losses to Georgia to kick off the season. They lost to Oklahoma State by 1. They've tied Texas in a game, but the Sooners have played this team early back in March, and the Sooners won 9-1. So I would anticipate an OU versus A&M. And if you've been watching OU softball for a while, this used to be the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M coming up to Norman, they leave their cleats, on the first or third base line, where maybe it's behind the plate. I forget whatever weird ritual they have. There are many, as we know, but yeah, I think I still feel very confident this team comes out of the regional unscathed. They should. They're more talented than any of these teams by far, but A&M at least has the track record of some significant wins throughout the season
Mm-hmm.
that have to give you a little bit of pause.
Yeah, you see the 29-26 record for Texas A&M, but then you also have to figure out, which conference they're playing in, and SEC collectively as a whole, that's the best softball conference in America. So that 6-18 record that they do have in the SEC is a little bit explainable. You do have to, like you said, Corbin, you talk about the wins that they've got. Wins over multiple top 25 teams, taking 2 out of 3 against number 5 Alabama. Texas A&M, if you're not on your A game, Texas A&M is a scrappy enough group to where they can beat you. So we've talked about it all season long. I don't see a team out there that can beat OU 2 times out of 3. That maybe changes a little bit now that you've lost your ace and you're going to have to rely on your second and third option. But no, I'm in a complete agreement with you. OU take care of business on Friday against Prairie View A&M. That set yourself up nicely. I think you are looking to probably have to beat Texas A&M twice in this regional upcoming this weekend. But we'll see what the pitching staff can do. And like I said earlier, if the lineup is awake and if the girls are swinging the bats fine, that makes your pitching staff makes them kind of breathe or exhale.
Yeah,
The pressure is a lot less.
1000%. And if the Sooners, do move on to the super regionals, if they're talking about the highest seed, you're looking to play, number 16 seed UCF, which is a pretty high
Yeah.
scoring team down there out of Florida. But sneaky here, Michigan also in that regional, and Michigan has actually beaten UCF earlier this year 6-0. If you want my gut opinion, Michigan's coming to Norman next week, which is a juicy matchup as far as
Mm-hmm.
just kind of softball name brands. But Ty, let's take a quick look. We talked pitching. You've got Troutwine and May. It's going to be the 1-2 combo, and they will probably ride those two all the way until the season ends. I don't think anybody else. But big question we had in our group chat was, then who? Who's the third pitcher of this group? And really, I think it comes down to Macy McAdoo, who is a junior, and Emmy Guthrie, who is a freshman. Neither have played this season, so I think unless there
Mm-hmm.
is a significant injury, knock on wood here, to a Troutwine, to a Nicole May, I just can't imagine seeing either one of those in the circle unless it is just a sheer blowout early in a game, and they're trying to save the arms of those top two.
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse, but yeah, you talked about it perfectly. If you're Patty Gasso, what's the best formula for your team going into this weekend, especially kicking things off with Prairie View A&M? Put up 10, 12 runs. Get yourself out to a pretty comfortable lead. Allow yourself to not have to throw Hope or Nicole, and allow a Macy McAdoo or an Emmy Guthrie to get in there. If there's one place that you want to get them an experience, it's at home in front of your crowd with maybe a 6, 7, 8 run lead. So yeah, it's a big one. I still think that you've got to have 3 pitchers in order to do it. Oklahoma, what we've seen over the past couple of years, now that Jordy Bahl it sounds like she's going to be out for probably the rest of the season. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's not the case. There's not a Paige Parker. There's not a Paige Lowry. There's not a G Juarez, I think, on this roster right now. Now, one thing that I think should give Sooner fans a little bit of hope is G Juarez struggled towards the very end of the regular season last year, even during the regionals, and I think she was even purposefully I don't want to say bench is the right word, but they did not have the confidence in her early in the postseason play. Fast forward all the way to the Women's College World Series, she's the best pitcher in that tournament. So, Hope Trotwine, Nicole Main, they've played all season long. They've got the experience now. We'll just see if they can peak at the right time now the postseason play is getting underway. And it's just crazy because, like I said, this is one of the most talented, and statistically speaking, this is one of the greatest softball teams of all time. And you just hate for them to not get the opportunity to finish this season like they played all year long, simply because their best pitcher is out.
Yeah, and I think the G-Wires reference is a great example because one, she was overcoming an injury, and even when she was healthy, it took her time to kind of get back to her normal self. It took her almost a year to do so, which I
Yeah,
think just goes to show you, whether positively or negatively, the regular season means nothing now. It doesn't.
right.
And so
Yeah,
you look at somebody like Nicole May, who hasn't necessarily pitched great on paper, great. But if you watch the games, hasn't necessarily been stellar performance. You can turn that page now, and you can take over for the postseason play. You could have said the same thing about Jordy Bahl. She could have crumbled when it came to postseason play. We'll have no idea, but that's just there's a dividing line between when conference championships are over and this really significant. You'll lose a couple, you're gone. Your season's over. It
yep.
really kind of irons out, the good from the great. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how it all plays out. I know a lot of our listeners probably have questions. So do we. Tyler,
One of
let's
this,
let's talk booty.
yeah, let's booty call. So, yeah, Corbin, we only thought that when David Bevel, the pit transfer, whenever he decided to come to Oklahoma, we only thought Oklahoma was done in the portal with quarterbacks, but no. Over the weekend, 6'3", 195 pound sophomore General Booty out of Tyler Junior College in Tyler, Texas, guy that's going to have 3 years of eligibility left. He committed to the Sooners over the weekend, and this is a guy that's got kind of a crazy story. Once you kind of look at his background, family pedigree. He's the son of former LSU receiver Abram Booty. His uncle Josh was a quarterback at LSU. His uncle John David played quarterback at USC when Pete Carroll was there. This guy went to 4 different high schools and ultimately finished out his high school career at Allen. So that's kind of that could definitely be interesting. That's kind of a good little segue, being able to get back into Allen, from other recruits coming out of there. Hey, look at what this guy's doing in Oklahoma. Not heavily recruited out of high school, though. It chose to go the JUCO route, spend a year at TJC. And statistically speaking, he had one of the most efficient seasons in junior college, especially in the state of Texas. 3,115 yards, 25 touchdowns. That was second in the country in junior college. In one game against Navarro last season, he threw for just over 500 yards, 8 touchdowns, and had 60 more on the ground. So we've got 7 quarterbacks in the room now. So surely somebody behind Dylan Gabriel is going to emerge, because that's a position of great need and something where we need a solid number 2 guy. I'm not sure if Booty is the number
Number two
2.
guy.
There we
Yeah.
go. But yeah, this can't hurt. This can't hurt having somebody else come in.
I have 2 thoughts. One, is he the front runner to make the most NIL money at the end of next season? Like, that name
Oh, it's got to be.
is going to get you so far. Secondly, I feel so ripped off as a Sooner fan that this guy wasn't enrolled and in Norman during the spring game, because we probably would have seen more of him there than any point next season. And the fact that we didn't get to hear Toby Rowland and some of those guys talk about Booty and some
Oh
of the
yeah.
it feels like we were wronged. Like, we should have gotten that experience, and
Oh yeah.
I'm very upset about that. But no, it's an addition. Who knows who's going to take the number 2 spot? I genuinely have no idea. There's more film on Booty than there is the Pitt transfer. But
Yep.
you would think, okay, the guy from Pitt sat behind a first round NBA era NFL draft pick quarterback. So it'll be very interesting to see how all this plays out. Does Nick Evers take massive steps and kind of solidify himself as number 2? I'd be most surprised at that scenario, I think, of the 3. But we'll see. We'll see. But I know that's not the only transfer who is making his way to Norman.
Yeah, we knew with all of the talent that we lost both to the NFL draft and to the transfer portal, we knew the wide receiver was going to be a position where going into spring, Oklahoma was needing to take at least one guy. And that was without even factoring in Cody Jackson, who ultimately he is still in the portal, choosing between a couple different schools. So me personally, I thought that OU was going to take 2. But we did get our first commit last week. Javian Hester, the Missouri transfer, and the former Booker T. Washington out of Tulsa standout. 6'3" sophomore, He was a 4-star under 247 Sports. He was a 3-star under Rivals, and I think Rivals had him rated as the number 5 player in the state of Oklahoma for the class of 2020. But yeah, last year caught 12 passes, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns. The biggest takeaway for me in the limited highlight tape that he has put out from his time at Missouri, he's a burner with size. I mean, you're talking about 6'3" in the video that he did put out. A guy that can be that size and stature, 6'3", 200 pounds, and can run and can reach a maximum speed of 22 miles an hour. We know what we've got in Marvin Mims. You know, Drake Stoops, a nice player. Theo Weiss is going to be a nice addition. Having him back from being bit by the injury bug. But no, I think that this is a guy where not sure how big of an impact he can be if he's going to be a starter, but I think that this is a guy with proven SEC experience that can come in and be some nice added depth.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because the intangibles are there. You look at him on paper, the size, the speed, it's all there. But then you look at his production at Missouri, and there's tons of question marks about,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if he has all these intangibles, where's the production? And so, yeah, I mean, if he can come on the scene and make a splash, obviously the more the merrier. We've got enough, I think, of the high end talent positions at the wide receiver spot. I think we'll be okay. I think the biggest question, we've been talking about this for weeks, is the depth in the wide receiver position. And so, could this be a nice depth guy? Of course. But I'm going to have to see, I think, a little bit more before I'm buying into that.
Well, I think he's definitely going to have an opportunity to make plays and have an impact on this. I mean, just looking at what Jeff Lebby's offenses do, you know, running 80, 90, 100 plays a day, the tempo, the fast pace of it, there's going to be a lot of rotations in this. So he's going to have his chances to make plays for this team. So it's just a matter of, you know, getting him on campus, getting him acclimated within this team, getting him brought up to speed on the system in which Jeff Lebby runs, and you know, getting him ready to go, forming that relationship with Dylan Gabriel. It's a nice pickup, and you know, Oklahoma needed him, and we got a good one from Missouri.